This is controversial. Oh, please listen to what I'm saying before we have any clapback. Hi everybody, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Carla. I make videos about showing up for yourself, and for me, that is what helped to change my entire life, helped me to overcome my mental health issues, to lose 180 pounds and basically live the best life that I can. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you a few more lessons that I learned from losing that weight. So this is the second video that I have done. I'll leave a link up here if you guys are interested in going and checking out the first 5 lessons that I learned from losing 180 pounds. I'll also link up here an entire weight loss journey playlist, which includes how I lost weight. So if you've just stumbled across me and you're like, who is this woman and what is she talking about? I'll leave a link up here so you guys can check that out. It's basically, you know, how I lost weight and all the different components that went into helping me to lose that 180 pounds and change my mental health and change my life forever. So as I said, in today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you 4 more lessons that I learned when losing 180 pounds. And I chose 4 because I was trying to round it up to 5, and I was like, nope, I don't want to just find something else. I want these to be like really well thought out, and I had 4 that were really well thought out, so we're going with it. So let's get into this video. Lesson number 1, the first lesson that I want to share with you today, is how I realized that I was most successful when I was accountable only to myself. So bear with me. My whole life I had been overweight, and I had always tried to lose weight. Like, you know, every Monday you're trying to lose weight, starting a new diet. Tomorrow I'll be good tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it next week. Oh no, in January, that's it. That's the day. I've decided this week I'm going to lose weight. Or somebody would have told me I need to lose weight. A doctor, my parents, my family members, a friend, a boyfriend, a teacher, somebody else has told me that I have to lose weight. Somebody's bribed me to lose weight, told me that they will buy me clothes or pay for every stone I lose, I'll get €100. That was one thing that was kind of bribed to me before. Bribed to me, is that a verb? Can you be bribed to? You get my drift. I tried to lose weight because of, you know, fitting with friends, or friends would have said something. And the big difference with all of those attempts at weight loss and this one is that I did this for me. And I decided to be accountable only to myself and not tell anybody else except the people who really needed to know. Obviously, like my partner Vincent, who I live with. It was a shift in knowing that this is so important to me, that this is for me, by me, and the accountability is only to me. It's not to a weight loss group. It's not to a leader of a group. It's not to a boyfriend, a friend, a husband, a wife, a girlfriend, whatever. It's not to a doctor. I'm not being accountable to somebody else. I'm not part of an accountability group. And it's almost as if this is the first time that I trusted myself, that I am the only one that needs to hold myself accountable. I don't need external accountability. I can be accountable to myself. And that was a really big shift in knowing and trusting myself. Let's tell a story, a hypothetical story. So Gina and Rachel, they decided to join their local running group because they both want to lose weight and they think that running is going to be the best way to do it, but they also just want to be really fit, and you know, they've never done anything before, so they decided to like join their local Couch to K group. And Gina and Rachel are totally up for it at the start. They're like really gung-ho, and they're like, you know, they go and they're like, wow, that was really, really difficult. And you know, a couple of weeks in, they're 3 weeks in, but they're really enjoying it, and they find it difficult but challenging, but they're still going back. 3 weeks in, Gina kind of gets that dip in motivation, you know, the middle. I'll leave that if you don't know. And she's like, oh, you know, I don't really know if I want to go tonight, you know, to the group. I can't really be bothered. And Rachel's like, oh no, I really want to go. No, please come. And she's like, no, I'm not gonna go. So Gina makes up some excuse, and Rachel's like, okay, fine then, like, I won't go tonight, you know, like, I won't go either. If you're not going, I'm not going. So neither women go. And then next Monday rolls around, and Rachel's like, right, Gina, are we going? I'll meet you there at 7 o'clock tonight. And Gina's like, oh God, you know, like, it's been a long week with the kids, and like all this stuff with work, and like, you know, it's a Monday, and if it wasn't on a Monday, it'd be great, you know, but because it's a Monday, you know, like, you know, that big paper that, you know, that the report that I had to write, and, you know, I was really like struggling today in work, and you know, Timmy has the flu, and I think this week I'll have to give it a go. And Rachel's like, okay, like, will I go by myself? Like, I feel a bit shy, like, you know, like I kind of really I feel like I need somebody there. I feel like I need it. And Rachel decides she's not going to go either. And then, you know, week 6 comes the next week, and neither girl even, or woman even bothers texting each other about it. And week 7 goes, and before you know it, they're not doing the running club anymore, and they've completely just, that's it, it's the end of that. And so that's a very typical conversation or typical story when it comes to accountability, because by being accountable to somebody else, you know, by Gina and Rachel deciding at the start that they are going to be accountable to each other, and that they're going to do the Couch to 5K, and they're going to take the 8 weeks to do it, and at the end it's going to be great. And then they realize, you know, as soon after, Gina's bowed out, and Rachel's kind of like, oh, she wants to do it, but she hasn't had the confidence to do it because she didn't believe that she could do it herself. And this time for me was learning that I needed to build the confidence in myself and not be accountable to anybody else. I needed to make sure that I could do this by myself, for myself. And I did. And I kept going, and I got there, and I didn't throw in the towel, and I was never accountable to anybody else. I was never accountable to anybody on the internet, even though I've shared my every week weigh-in for the whole 14 months that took me to lose weight, and then like my bit postpartum. I never felt accountable to anybody else except myself. And it kind of goes along the lines with the, you know, when I say don't tell other people as well. But this is really the accountability, and it's really because other people can derail your progress, you know, because of their SHIT. The next lesson that I learned from successfully losing 180 pounds is that deprivation can lead to binging. I, again, as I said, had been trying to lose weight my whole life and had some success in the past, but my success was based on white knuckling it and not addressing the reasons or the habits that brought me to being 180 pounds overweight. And so I was basically feeling like constantly like, and by white knuckling it, I mean like, you know, when you're on a ride, you're on a roller coaster and you're holding on and your knuckles are white and you're holding on for dear life, or you're on, you know, like a chin-up bar and you're holding on, or you're over a ravine and you're like holding on for dear life, because if you can just hold on and just not eat the chocolate and not eat the thing, then I'll get there and it'll be fine. And you've literally got white knuckles by the end of doing that. I think somebody outside thought I was like throwing my fist at them. I'm not. And so by white knuckling it, which is what I did every other time, is you're not addressing the core issue. You're just putting a band-aid over stopping yourself from eating. Instead, I needed to address the reasons as to why I was overweight so that I didn't want to overeat. I didn't want to eat the things that I thought I needed to eat, or the things that were comforting to me, and find and teach ways to comfort myself, teach myself ways to comfort myself in other methods. And one of the things as well that I did that really helped with this as well is that I learned about volume eating, or as I call it, the abundance principle. So learning how to eat and satisfy the former binger in me, the food addict in me, with really high volumes of food, but at very low calorie density so that I did not feel deprived, because every other time when I was losing weight, I felt like I was deprived. I felt like I was not getting what I needed, and what I thought I needed was food, but actually what I needed was to deal with the things that were bringing up the feelings. And by dealing with the things that were bringing up the feelings that I didn't want to deal with, I would reach for food. Or sorry, by dealing with the things, I no longer reached for food. And that for me made a big difference in terms of losing weight, is not white knuckling it, addressing those reasons and realizing that deprivation can lead to binging. Because if I just kept ignoring, you know, the binging is basically as a result of, it's a comfort mechanism. It is a reaction to something. And by not dealing with the reason as to why I was needing that reaction or that comfort, I would then binge. You know, like I would basically white knuckling it through, going, no, I'm not going to eat the chocolate, I'm not going to eat the chocolate, I'm not going to eat the chocolate. And then eventually I would fall off, and you'd eat the chocolate, and you'd eat 4 things of chocolate, or 10 or 15 bars of chocolate. And, you know, you'd feel like you've fallen off the wagon, and that's a whole different kettle of fish. And I think that is something that really changed for me in this successful journey, is because this wasn't about depriving myself. This was about understanding why I reached for chocolate. Like, yes, chocolate is nice. And now, and during my whole weight loss journey, I was able to enjoy chocolate, and actually enjoy it, because you don't enjoy it when you're scarfing it into your mouth, as opposed to feeling like I couldn't have any of it, and allowing myself and dealing with my coping mechanisms so that I was not using food as a coping mechanism, so that if I wanted a piece of chocolate, I could have it, and that chocolate or tortilla chips for me were no longer associated with feelings, they were just food. Basically what I'm saying is that being deprived leads to binges, but addressing the feeling of deprivation before that is something that I learned, that I can change that mental state of feeling deprived by eating from the abundance principle, and by addressing my need or my coping mechanism, and changing that coping mechanism from food to something else, until I dealt with the trauma that made me need that coping mechanism. Yes, so I realized that deprivation leads to binging. So denying myself my coping mechanism led me to doubling down on my coping mechanism, and food was my coping mechanism. So changing my coping mechanism and ensuring I never felt deprived until I changed that coping mechanism, that is what helped me this time. So learning that every time before I was white knuckling and holding on and just praying that I wouldn't binge was not going to do it, because eventually you're going to snap, and eventually you're going to fall off that wire and end up in that binging lagoon. And so addressing that before part, that need for food and that deprivation, so that we don't feel deprived, is the key. Okay, next lesson. You cannot control the outputs, you can only control the inputs. Let me say that again. You cannot control the outputs of weight loss, you can only control the inputs. What do I mean? You cannot control the number on the scales. You can only control the numbers that you put in hopes that it will get you to whatever that number on the scales is. I come from a business background. I have a long time in a business background, too long. I have a degree in business, and I ran a charity for years and years and years, like 11 years. And there would always be a lot of like frameworks around. So you'd have your inputs, So say in clothing manufacturing, you have your inputs, you have material, you have thread, you have design patterns, you have dye, you have loads of other things. Then you have your processes, so your people and all that kind of stuff. And then you have your outputs, which are dresses, and then your outcomes are your money. Jesus, wow. And I've never got a job as a business lecturer, surprisingly enough. Basically, you've got inputs, processes, outputs, and outcomes. And the difference between outputs are like obvious, like things that are output, like a dress, but an outcome of that is that that dress earns you, you know, by selling X amount of units of that dress, it earns you 20,000 euro, say for example. So you cannot control, in terms of a weight loss journey, you cannot control the outputs, which would be the number on the scales, nor the outcomes that result from that. So the outcomes are your non-scale victories, you know, you're feeling how good you're feeling. The only thing that you can control are your inputs into your processes. And to be very business orientated. So your inputs here are your numbers. We're looking at numbers. You can control the calories that you eat. You can control the number of minutes of walking that you do. You can control the speed at which you're walking. You can control your water intake. You can control the number of hours that you sleep. Hopefully, sometimes with a tiny human, you cannot, but you can control as much as possible. So by controlling those inputs, they go through the process and they all mix together and they work together, you know, in your body. Your outputs are the result on the scales, and your outcomes then are how you feel and your non-scale victories and what that number translates to into your whole life. Let me go through that again. Your inputs are your number of calories that you eat. They are the number of hours that you sleep, the units of water that you drink, and your amount that you exercise, walking, whatever it might be. They all go through your processes. So they would be, your inputs are very similar to you know, your materials, your yarn, your dye, your patterns. Then they go through the processes. So in weight loss, our processes are what's happening in our body, our metabolism, the gluconeogenesis, your metabolism working. So they're all processes. So in a factory, making clothes, your processes are cutting the material, they are sewing them together, they're dyeing them, they're pressing them, they're putting them onto hangers, and then your outputs are your final dress, or your outputs in weight loss is the number on the scales, and then your outcome for your factory is the amount of money that that generates you, and the output for weight loss is the rest of your life. So you can, while in like a factory or something like that, you're a bit better able to control, because you know if you're going to put this amount of clothes, you know, this amount of material, this amount of dye, etc., you're going to get this amount of dresses, and then it's going to be sold to Reese for this amount of money. Whereas we don't have that with our body, because we're all different. So we're not a factory. We don't have, like, you know, we don't press a button and it works in the same way. So I might do exactly the same thing as you might do, but you might lose 4 pounds in 1 week and I might lose 0.5 of a pound in a week. So it's because we are biological, we're very, very different in our makeup. We are not a machine. We will all lose at different times and different rates. And you cannot control how much you will lose and when you will lose it. But eventually, by doing those processes and having those really good inputs, you will get that output and you will get that outcome. Something I learned, because I always wanted to control that number, and when I realized and I relinquished the control on that number and I controlled my input, I succeeded. Last one, guys. And this is controversial. Oh, please listen to what I'm saying before we have any clapback for this. One of the biggest lessons that I learned from losing 180 pounds, and maybe even the biggest lesson that I learned, is that I was responsible for my weight. I was responsible for being 323.8 pounds. Now, when I say that, I am not saying that to shame myself. I am not shaming my former self. What I was and what I'm doing is understanding. I spent 30 something years blaming other people for my weight. And yes, other people had a role to play in me becoming 323.8 pounds. However, there were issues and things that happened to me. There were people and issues and trauma that happened to me. And yes, while those issues are technically to blame, I, as a person, was responsible for how I reacted to those. And I'm not saying that from a place of shame. The reason I'm saying that is because I understood that that is my reaction to that trauma and to being triggered and to what had happened to me. I reacted to reminding myself of the trauma, or being triggered by the trauma, or being triggered by somebody with food. That was a reaction. That my reaction was to seek comfort with food. And because I was constantly being triggered, I was constantly seeking food. And so I had to realize that that is my responsibility. I am not shaming myself for that responsibility, for becoming 323.8 pounds. I am not shaming myself for that. That is the reaction that I learnt, and that worked for me as a coping mechanism to get there and to deal with it. And the most beautiful thing about understanding that is that I understood that I had the power then to undo that. I had the power to change the way I reacted to being triggered and eventually reduce the trigger and deal with the trauma so I no longer became triggered. My whole life I had spent blaming everybody else. But then I also was looking externally for somebody to fix my problem of my weight. And I realized that I am the only person who's gonna fix this. I'm the person who literally put the food in my mouth, because nobody else told me to put the food in my mouth. Nobody sat there. I was not a fatted duck being force-fed to make foie gras. I used the food. I'm the one who put the food in my mouth. And I realized that I could be the one who could not. I could be the person who go, no, I'm going to change this. I'm going to break this reaction that I have. I'm going to break this habit, this cycle that I have, and change this. And that's what I did. And by doing that and realizing it and taking responsibility for my place in getting me to that weight. And again, this is not, I'm not saying you're to blame. That's not what I'm saying to myself. You're the one who did this. You're the one, because that's what I felt like to everybody else. It was more of a, oh, okay, I understand now. I feel compassion to myself now. I feel like I want to give myself a hug to say, of course, this is how you dealt with what was going on inside you. Of course this is what you learned was comfort. You learned that food was love, and so you sought the love and the comfort with food. I understand you. And now I'm going to help you help myself to change this, to change that, and to understand that I have the power and I have the responsibility to myself to change it. Nobody else is going to do it for me. And things are hard, and there are so many things that are so hard, but I can change this. That is the biggest lesson that I've learned. Guys, thank you so much for coming to the end of this video with me, and 4 more lessons that I learned while losing 180 pounds. If you've got to the end of this video, please leave me a black heart and a white heart at the end. Weight loss is a very challenging and very stressful time, and I really hope that these videos that I make help any of you to shed light on some of the light that I have found along the way with my journey. I will love you and leave all of you and talk to you very, very soon. And sending you all so much love. As I said, guys, is that a big stain on the thing? Milk today, my love is gone away. I can see a tiny Brannock fingerprint. Simple of the tongue. Do, 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 do. Where's my notes? Right.